Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new tutorial series. One of the most common requests I get is to do videos on completing very specific missions, so that is what this series is going to be about. Each week I will complete a single contract from career mode, and in the process of doing that we'll be exploring not just the mechanics of the game, but also ideas in rocketry, aerodynamics, and space exploration. In this first episode, I'll be looking at the contract Gathering Scientific Data from Kerbin. I'll start with a very general overview of the KSC and the 3 resources you need to manage in career mode. I'll then look at accepting and managing contracts in game, followed by how and where to collect, store, and recover that sweet, sweet science. And finally, before we get started, this is Kerbal Space Program 1.12.3 with none of the DLCs installed and no mods installed other than an ambient light mod so that you can see the night scenes a little bit better. Alright, so let's get ourselves started here. We're of course going to start brand new here. We're going to make sure this is on career. I'll give this a name. This is going to be a career mode walkthrough. If I can spell it right. There we go. And we'll pick ourselves a flag. I do have some custom flags in here, and this is one that was made by a kind Discord user for specifically my tutorial one, so I'll grab that. I do like that particular flag. We're going to keep the difficulty level on normal, but there is one thing I want to toggle on, and I want to just draw attention to this. If we go under the Advanced tab, down under here, you will see Kerbal G-force limits, and what this does is that the Kerbals will go unconscious if you pull too many Gs. That is, if you accelerate too quickly. They don't die, they just go unconscious. There is a single contract that only will spawn if you have this toggled on. If you don't care about that contract, then don't worry about that part. And you can explore through the rest of this. The rest of these do not affect contracts at all. It just affects your gameplay. You can decide, I'm going to just keep everything else on normal. We're going to accept that, and we're going to start our game. And this is from my one mod that I do have installed. In fact, I'm just going to get rid of this right now, and we will not speak of this again. But we do get our customary welcome from Gene, who's telling us that this is the Kerbal Space Center. Yeah, let's just say thanks, I got that. And tells you that each of these buildings do something for you. And if you want to know what the building is for, you just need to hover over it. For instance, here, this is the astronaut complex, and it tells you what it is. And if you right click on it, notice that this is an astronaut complex with facility level 1. Each building has 3 levels. This one's at the first one. And because of that, we have some restrictions on what we can do. We can only have 5 active Kerbals, and Kerbals can only disembark on Kerbin. That means on Kerbin's surface itself. They cannot come out of their capsules or cockpits anywhere else at this point. If we don't like that, well, what we got to do is we got to upgrade it. It's going to cost us 75,000 Kerbucks, which we do not have. But if we spend our 75,000 Kerbucks, then we can get up to 12 Kerbals. You can see as I hover over it that we get 12 active Kerbals. We can do our EVAs anywhere, and we can plant flags. Things like that. So you can do that with each of the buildings. We'll talk about the buildings in detail as they come up in this tutorial. Up here at the top, we have 3 resources that we do have to keep track of. One is the amount of funds that we have. We always refer to these as Kerbucks. We start with 25,000 Kerbucks. As we perform missions, or specifically fulfill contracts, we will be getting paid for that, and that's how we can fund our program. I'll go to the one on the end here. This is our science. Science you use to unlock new technologies. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And in the middle here, this obscure kind of bar is our reputation. Reputation does have an effect. It's not completely obvious, but it affects both the quality and quantity of contracts that you get offered. So you also want to build up your reputation. Now, I am playing this with a PC. Many of you I know are console players. That is great, but the controls that I'm going to mention are going to be PC controls. Apologies to people that are playing on the console. There also are some features on the PC that aren't available on the console game. Again, my apologies, not much I can do about that. However, if you have questions, one place for you to go is if we go down here to the bottom right, there's a little book symbol here. This is the KSPedia. There is tons of really good quality information in here under various different things, and you can click on them and explore them as you like. But like, for instance, one thing here is the controls. It's the one that was up here right now. It tells us our general controls, what the default keys are, how you can do that. They can't be changed, which is unlike a lot of games, but they are what they are. So if you have questions about, I always get questions of how do I throttle up and how do I pitch forward? It's all right here. It's all right here in the game, regardless of what platform you are playing on. Anyway, let's get started with our very first mission. And in order to take a look at our missions, we have to go over here to our mission control. At the mission control facility, all available contracts are managed. It also offers a very nice view of the launch sites for any who are brave enough to be so close to a launching craft. Obviously, the last bit of that was just for color. This is the main bit of that. This is where we manage our contracts. There are 3 tabs here that we can click on. The available tabs are what contracts are available to you. Active tabs are what contracts. Did I say conflicts before? I think I did, but contracts that you have active that you still have to fulfill. Obviously, that's now blank. And archives are contracts that have been completed or failed or canceled by you over the course of the particular game. Let's go over here to available, and you can see here that there are 4 contracts that we have available to pick up. They have different prestige levels, right? 1-star, 2-star, and 3-star. Obviously, this is referring to the difficulty level of these contracts. Let's click on the first one, gather scientific data from Kerbin. So at the very beginning, we have a briefing here with a little bit of color. You can read that or you cannot read that. That is up to you. But underneath the objectives, it tells you what you really do need to do in order to fulfill the goal of the contract. That is to recover or transmit any science experiment data from Kerbin to achieve this particular goal. If you achieve this specific goal, you will get, upon completion, 6,400 KERBucks, 1 science point, and 2 reputation points. If you complete all the objectives, then you get these ones down here, 4,160 KERBucks, 1 more science point, and 2 more reputation. Also, what's important to note is there is an advance. This is money you get for simply accepting the contract. Just hitting the accept button gets us 2,240 KERBucks. For that reason, you actually always want to accept as many contracts as you can. It gets more money coming in that allows you to do more things. Useful thing to do. Just make sure you want to be able to complete those contracts, because there are a couple of other things to note. Number 1 is that the offer does expire in 2 days, 5 hours, and etc. If you wait that amount of game time, this contract will go away, and it may or may not respawn. This is a game assuming you're not interested in this particular contract. Let's give you another one that you are interested in. So do pay attention to these expiry dates, especially once you get into missions that start taking more time. You don't want that to happen. But let's accept this contract. We're going to hit accept, and now we'll go under now our active contract tabs, and this is now a contract we need to perform. And I want to draw attention to one more thing with this contract. Up here at the top right, it says expires never. Some contracts have expiry dates. Pay attention to them. If you let a contract expire, that contract will be considered a failure. And some contracts, this one doesn't because it's one of the first ones, have penalties for failure. So pay attention to that. You can also cancel your contract, though I'm clearly not going to do that. Now, as I mentioned, it's good to pick up as many contracts as you can. We can hold a maximum of 2 contracts. If we want more contracts, obviously we have to upgrade mission control. We need money for that. That's going to come at a later date. But let's pick up one more contract just to get the advance. And the next sensible one is to launch our first vessel. It will give us an advance of 1,000 to 120 KERBAL plus some points for completion. Now, these first two contracts, collect some science and launch a vessel, are pretty easy to do with just a single vessel. You can do those both at the same time. But with this series, I'm going to limit one contract per video. So I'm going to save this one for the next video. So I'm just going to hit accept that particular contract. Now I'm at my maximum of 2. You can see that they are now in our archives, ready to go. We are ready to get started. So we want to collect science. We have to build something. And we're going to build something in the vehicle assembly building. The VAB is where spacecraft are designed and built before being moved over to the launch pad for flight. So we're going to click on that. And we get some information about the, we're going to just click that. And we're going to build by far the simplest vessel ever. We don't want something that can fly. Again, that's going to be for next episode. So all I'm going to do is go over here towards the top left, and we have the Mark 1 command pod. This Mark 1 command pod is something that will house Kerbals, and this houses a maximum of 1 Kerbal. Later in the game, you'll get bigger command pods or cockpits for planes, but for now, this is all we got. We want to collect science, so if we go down through the tabs here, there is one tab way down here, almost at the bottom, called Science. Let's see what science we have available. Oh, we have one science experiment that is available. It is the Mystery Goo Containment Unit, and you can read some of the color that is there if you like, but if you right click on it, we do get more information about this particular experiment, and I'm going to be talking about this information as we do the experiment itself, so I'm not going to read through it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these and I'm simply going to click it here on the side, and that is our entire craft. If we go over to the tabs here, we have some more information about stuff, and the one I'm interested here is the second one, which is crew. We can select our crew. Jebediah has already jumped into the pilot seat, but this mission, we're not going to be doing any flying. We're interested in science. So sorry, Jebediah, we're going to kick you out of there, and we're going to look at our scientist, Bob. And the thing to notice about a scientist, let's put him in there, but notice that there are effects that the scientist has. Scientists can boost the value of the data from scientific experiments. So right now, Bob is only a level 0 scientist. We have to do stuff with him in order to level him up. So right now, we don't get that particular bonus, but as Bob levels up, we will. However, he does have the ability to reset experiments and to run experiments while on EVA. That is something that pilots and engineers cannot do. So even though we're not getting our science bonus, there are some abilities that Bob does have over Jebediah, Bill, and Valentina. And with that, we are pretty much ready to go. I'm not going to save this. This is a silly vessel. We're going to go over to here. We're going to hit launch, and we're going to put this thing onto the launch pad. And let's take a look at our science experiment. So we're going to right click on it, and we're going to say observe mystery goo. And you can see the goo will open, and we get a little bit of color here. The goo doesn't seem to be doing much right now, but what I want to talk about is the information that comes down here below. We have a data size, which is 10 MITs. A MIT is the Kerbalized version of a bit. I don't want to get it, but it's how much data this concerns. This only becomes a factor if you are going to transmit it. You transmit it by hitting the transmit button here. However, notice that this is inoperable because we don't have an antenna. You need an antenna in order to transmit your science, so this won't work anyway. Besides that, I don't want to do it because notice that the transmit is saying I only get 42% of the available science if I hit transmit. That's the little blue bar here. I only get this much, right? But if I recover it, I get this much. So For a lot of the science, it is very much a benefit for you to get that science back to Kerbin's surface and recover it as opposed to transmit it. We'll talk about this in more detail as more science experiments become available, but here we're on the surface of Kerbin. Clearly recovering it is going to be the thing to do. And to recover it, we're going to recover 3 science when we do that. Notice that the green bar here only goes part way across. It doesn't fill the whole thing. So what this is telling us is we are not getting all the science that's available from this site. There is still more science that we can collect if we come back here with a mystery goo on a later mission. The last thing I want to draw attention to is up here. It says this is a mystery goo observation from the launch pad. This launch pad word is directly implying that if you go somewhere else other than a launch pad with a mystery goo, here, let's just reset the experiment. There are tons of other buildings around here. If you go to one of those other buildings with a mystery goo, you can collect more science there. So we refer to each of these regions, let's do this again, like the launch pad, as a biome. Launch pad really doesn't have much to do with biology, but that's kind of the default word that KSP uses to describe various different regions on the surface of a planet. So the launch pad is a biome, but also the vehicle assembly building is a biome. All of these places are biomes. We can take mystery goos to them and collect more science. So if you need more science to collect, get out there and collect it. But we're just going to hit this little green button which says keep this particular experiment. You might go, oh, well, that's it. No more experiments to do. No. There's science all over the place on this thing. If I right click on the capsule itself, I get all kinds of options here as to what things I can do with this capsule. But hidden way down here is, at the very bottom, is crew report. Every capsule or cockpit that can hold a Kerbal can do a crew report. And if I click crew report, that brings up more science that we can do. This is a crew report from the launch pad. So again, if we went somewhere else, we can get more science there. And we are 1.5 science. Notice the bar goes all the way to the end. That means once we have recovered this science, we're done. There are no more crew reports we can do from the launch pad. It's over. We can also transmit all of this science, 100% of it, if we could transmit, which we can't, so we won't. What we will do, though, is we will just keep this experiment. So that's another 1.5 science. That is now done, and there's still more. There's more because Bob can go out, and Bob can do some science himself. So Bob's going to let go of the capsule here. He's going to come on out. Let's take Bob's helmet off. And while we're at it, the little neck ring too. I mean, you know, he's not having any issues here. Bob has experiments that he can do too. If we click on Bob or right click on Bob, we can do an EVA report. And by the way, all Kerbals can do an EVA report, not just scientists. So all Kerbals can do an EVA report. We will do that. And we can see, again, this is from the launch pad. This is we can go to different locations. 2.4 science. We could have transmitted all that, but again, all of it, right? So we're going to collect that. And there we go. So that is actually all the science that we have available to collect with the setup that we have here. Now, I could just put Bob inside, recover this, and we're done, but there are some things I want to show you. If, while Bob is outside here, we right-click on the capsule, notice that one of the things that we can do here is store the experiment. This is taking the experiment that Bob has and storing it inside the capsule. So now that experiment has been added into the capsule. Bob now can do another EVA report, but we know doing an EVA report on the launch pad won't get us anything more. We have to go someplace else. So let's go someplace else. Let's see what we got here. If we right click on Bob and do another EVA report, notice now it says this is an EVA report from the crawlerway, another 2.4 science. So we're going to collect that and we're going to get ourselves back. Now, obviously I could continue to collect science from all the different buildings around the KSC, but it is a pain doing that on foot like Bob is doing right now. It takes a while for you to run around between the different buildings. Later on, we'll build ourselves a vehicle and we'll do ourselves a little explorer. Bob can just go in there if you want, but we'll, again, just show you how this works. Right-click on the capsule, store that experiment. That experiment is now stored in there. There is no limit to how much experiments can be stored inside any capsule. You can store as many as you want. And some people get confused by this, but that's because you can't store identical experiments. So for instance, if Bob did another EVA report on the launch pad, notice that there is some science here because as far as the game is concerned, there's no science in the bank, so to speak. So it says, yeah, 2.4 science, let's collect that. But if I try to store that in there, it says EVA report from the launch pad already stored in the capsule. Oops, we didn't read the rest of that. Not all items could be stored. Okay, and if you try to take Bob and you try to go in, grab on and board, it gets cannot store experiments. Experiment to be collected cannot be stored in the mark. Are you sure you want to continue? And you go, well, either you board and you dump the experiments or you cancel and then you don't board. There's no way to get that experiment on board. It's not because this is full. It's because there already is a Launchpad EVA experiment on there. So don't let that confuse you. And with that, there really is nothing else for us to do. So we'll get Bob back into the capsule. We will have to dump this experiment. And then we'll recover by just pushing the green button up here at the top of the screen. And once back at the KSC, we get a nice summary of all the experiments we did collect. We now have a total of 11 science. And if we check down here for our messages, we will notice that we have a few messages here, but one of our messages is that our contract is now complete. So we have completed the gathering scientific data from Kerbin. They give you a little bit of a color message here. When we got to page 9 of your report, we thought you might be stalling. We are starting the launch countdown now. I'm not quite sure that makes sense, but it tells you what rewards you got for that. As well, if we take a look, there is a contract parameter that got met. There's the rewards we got for that, for gathering that scientific data. And we also achieved a few milestones. We performed our first EVA test at home and got 3,200 KERBAL and 1 reputation point for that. And we performed the first one of our experiments at home, again 3,200 KERBAL and 1 reputation point for that. So always make sure to be checking these messages that are popping up down here at the bottom right. So we got ourselves a little bit more cash, a tiny little bit of reputation, the bar has moved a little bit, and 11.3 science. But before we finish off, let's take a quick look at the main takeaways from this video. We looked at how to use mission control to manage contracts, and to not be shy about grabbing those advances, even if you don't have an immediate plan to complete that particular contract. We then looked at collecting science. Remember that some science, like crew and EVA reports, can be a little hidden. Don't forget about them. We also looked at biomes, and that more science can be available if you travel to different locations. And finally, we looked at how to store experiments in capsules, which is often necessary in order to perform an experiment again. And with that, this episode is drawing to a close. In the next video, I will be getting a KERBAL off the ground, but until then, I thank you for watching and hope to see you again next time.